Welcome back to LaughLines and LifeLines Podcast. I'm Sarah Perez, as you know.
And I'm Elly Mulhair, as you should also know.
Yes, we are back.
Back on the stomping ground.
Thank you. Yes, thank you everyone for tuning in every week. This has been so fun so far. Yeah. We are on our 10th episode.
That's freaking bonkers.
Yes. We are back where it all started in my house. So Daisy and Captain will probably be making themselves known here soon. Oh, well, Daisy for sure.
Putting herself in the kennel.
Daisy, yeah, she does that.
Wow.
I'm very bright tonight.
This is Sarah's, so.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, you'll be able to see me. My nails are bright. My shirt's bright.
I'm very.
Yeah.
Calm.
Toned down, yeah. Right. Anyway, so for the next 2 weeks, we are talking about testimonies.
Two-part episodes.
We're going to start tonight with mine, and then next week we'll do Elly's.
Full disclosure, starting with hers because I have not showered in a hot minute.
Oh, baby. Yes.
And I just felt gross talking about my savior when I look a little gross.
Yeah, yeah.
So, full disclosure. That's what we're for.
So I will jump right in. We got to pick up Everly in a half an hour. So we'll jump right in. So basically, my testimony starts way when I was a child. That's where at least I'm.
So does Daisy's apparently.
So my testimony. Daisy is not cooperating.
They're knocking on the door. Let me in.
Oh my gosh, she's so dramatic.
Sorry, you're in timeout.
Is Captain on camera? Oh,
you good boy.
Captain, you good boy. Come here.
He said, no? Mom, you teach me not to do that.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, so my testimonies. So mine starts way back from when I was a child. I have a lot of trauma in my childhood, starting from when my mother got sick at the age of 3, when I was 3.
Not when she was
3, when I was 3. She had brain cancer. So my memories and my mental capacity to take all that in was just, I was a child. I was a very young child. I think about Everly. She's 4.
True. Yeah.
I think about, how devastating that had to be for my whole family. And like, I don't remember that, like when she got sick. What I do remember is, a lot of times people will ask me, oh, do you remember your mom? And I do in certain ways. I remember not so happy things, unfortunately. I don't remember her personality. I don't remember her mannerisms. I don't remember stuff like that. I remember chemo and sickness, hospitals and
yuck
and all that. And that really messed with my psyche from a very, very young age. We moved to a very small town, to Parker, and from way back then, I started pretending. I pretended to be like everyone else because I didn't have a home life like everyone else. With a sick parent, things are a lot different at home. So I remember in kindergarten, first grade, I remember going to school and looking at the other kids in my class and being like, okay, that's how you act. This is how you're supposed to act. Because like I was so preoccupied with everything at home that I literally didn't know how to be a kid. So that's where like my troubles started. After that, some other very traumatic things happened. My mom did eventually pass away when I was 6. And in a small town, that definitely
everybody knows.
Everybody knows you. Everybody knows the situation, or they think they know the situation.
Right.
And I felt like such an outsider, or not an outsider. That's not the right way to put it. I felt like a zoo animal.
On display?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, like, I would walk into a room and, oh, that's the family.
That's the girl whose mom died.
Whose mom died or
Yeah.
whose mom is sick. And that's all I ever knew.
Yeah.
So that messes with you. And, like, through many years of therapy now, I've learned how that shaped me. How that started my mental process.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that's where it started and where it led me. And I, was just living my life and doing the best that I could at a very young age. Starting at age 8, some more traumatic things happened. I ended up being sexually molested by a family member. And that, again, led me to feel shame.
Oh, yeah.
Like I didn't even know existed, but that's all I ever knew again. And that led me to begin not liking myself, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
And that went on for 2 years, unfortunately. And I remember, my testimony is all about pretending. And again, I remember going to school and looking at the other kids, and like there was literally times where the abuse would happen on the way to school.
Oh my gosh, Sarah.
And I would have to
just pretend.
Yeah, exactly. I would have to go to school and pretend like nothing happened and act like a normal kid.
Right. Which, you should be doing at age 9, being
exactly,
a normal kid.
Exactly. And I remember when those times would happen and just feeling sick. Because I felt like, I love my family, and I'm not sharing this to shame anyone or anything like that, but this is what happened. This is
part of your story.
This is part of the story. And I just know that these events are what shaped my future, and not in a good way, until like 8 years ago, but we'll get to that. And so that happened for 2 years, and the pretending continued. And I remember that also the feeling of being afraid of men started then as well. I felt like I didn't have a place to go, a safe place to go, when these things happened. And that's just because my family, they're used to not talking about things, much like I'm sure other families are in this country or in this world. And so a lot of times with people who have gone through abuse, you again feel shame,
right? And
2, you don't know, you feel like you won't be believed.
Yeah. Oh, big. Yeah.
And so it's a double-edged sword. So you feel like you can't tell anyone, because in a lot of ways it feels like your fault. And those feelings are something that I still feel to this day. Like I remember what that felt like, and it makes my heart jump. And that's just something that's ingrained in me, unfortunately. Anyway, so that happened, and then I was just living life, and I think I was 13, my grandma got sick. So it'd be my mom's mom. She got sick, and she was the closest thing I had to my mom,
right?
To my real mom. In that time, my dad had remarried, to whom I refer to as my mom now. She adopted us. So my first mom,
Your biological mom.
My biological mom's mom got sick. She was the closest thing I had to my mom, and she was really the only one that would talk about my mom. Nobody in the family would talk about her.
That's such a thing that happens. People die and they're like, meh.
Yeah. Well, in my family, it was just too painful.
Oh. I see.
Yeah. Just because she was so young. She had 4 young kids at home.
Yeah.
My dad, bless his heart, like, he didn't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
Rightfully so. And so anyway, she got sick. She ended up passing away from cancer as well. So that happened. After that, my senior year of high school came around, and I remember all throughout school, I had terrible grades.
Really?
Yes.
I'd have never guessed that.
Yep, I did. Because I was so in survival mode. Like, my parents believed that I had like ADD and like a learning disorder.
Wow.
But I'm like, now I see it. Like, I was literally in survival mode. Like, I couldn't be bothered to really. I couldn't be bothered. He almost fell.
Oh.
So in school, I couldn't be bothered to concentrate on anything. I physically couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And that came off to my parents as,
there's something wrong.
Yeah, there's something wrong, which there was something very much wrong.
Well, yeah.
But I couldn't share that with them.
Right.
So my parents believed that I had all these learning disabilities or like ADD, and I was even on medication for a while.
Wow.
And I remember having so much anxiety at such a young age because I knew I was doing bad in school.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what to do about it.
Right.
I didn't have the coping mechanisms to do anything about it. I couldn't share what was really going on because I was scared.
Terrifying.
Crapless.
Yeah.
And anyway, so moving on to like high school, grades were terrible. And there was a lot of small town drama in where I grew up.
You couldn't pay me enough money to live in a small town.
Yeah,
nope.
yeah. So
nope.
There was just a lot of small town drama, and with my family and the school, and that's a whole nother story, but I won't get into that tonight. So I ended up switching schools in my senior year of high school. So my parents thought that, that would be a good idea. And like, I was happy about it because I couldn't wait to get out of school. And for the first time in my life, I was on the honor roll. And so backing up just a little bit, I had met my ex-husband when I was 14 years old. And
was that your freshman year of high school?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, when I was 14 years old. And we started dating at that age. And I remember, going back to the whole being scared of men thing, I was scared of him too at the beginning.
Yeah.
Because literally every guy that was even remotely interested just wanted to get in my pants. And that was not going to happen no matter what. And he's the first guy that didn't immediately try to do that. So I was like, okay, I can trust this guy.
Yeah.
And I could. But with that being said, we, started dating at such a young age. He was 2 years older than me, and we dated all throughout high school, a little bit off and on. But he ended up joining the Army, and I was still in high school, and he went off to basic training and all that stuff. And I clung to him. He became my everything, because I had always gone to church and all that stuff growing up. But I never had a relationship with God. And I know now that there's a very big difference in that. Huge.
Huge.
So I always thought like, oh, I know God, like he's always there when I need him,
right.
and all that stuff. But it was such a facade.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It was so ridiculous. I can laugh at that now. Anyway, so my senior year of high school, I'm going to a different school. My ex is back from training. He actually deployed right after that to Iraq.
Dang.
This was right after the war started, so it was...
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was very, very scary. Very scary. So here I am, this 17-year-old who has a boyfriend that's in a war. I didn't speak to him for the first 7 months he was gone.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I didn't hear his voice for 7 months.
Jeez.
Mm-hmm. And because at that time, he was part of a group of soldiers, units, that were traveling around Iraq and disposing of Saddam Hussein's like stockpiles.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Like ammunition stockpiles.
That's intense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So he was all over the country, and so he could never...
Right.
Daisy, stop. Anyway, so yeah, I was dealing with that my senior year of high school, and then January, I think it was like January 4th or 6th of my senior year of high school, I come home one day, and mind you, my little sister and I and my mom had moved into a 1-bedroom apartment because my family was relocating to Iowa. And my mom said that she would stay back with me so I could finish high school. So we moved into this tiny 1-bedroom apartment in the back of her salon. And so I get home that day, and my dad was there, my grandparents were there, obviously my mom was there. They were all crying. I'm like, what the heck is going on? And this is what started World War III. Some stuff had happened in my parents' marriage, and basically everything was blowing up. And yeah, that was World War III. They had a really nasty divorce. In that divorce, they both did really terrible things to each other, to us kids, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And it was a battle. In that time, I had graduated high school at 17. Within a 3-week span, I had 2 grandpas pass away. Oh. And then not even 2 weeks later, I graduated high school.
This is crazy. Sorry.
Yeah.
Like the fact that that's also so close to my life.
Mm-hmm. I know.
Literally, we have a moment like this every single podcast episode.
Every time.
My grandpa died.
Mm-hmm.
I had prom. Graduated high school. Parents got divorced.
Yep.
Goodbye.
Crazy, right?
Goodbye.
Oh, that's so funny. It's not, but
it's not what it is.
Anyway, so after high school, I start school, had no idea what I wanted to do. I was going to go for nursing. And because I was a CNA all throughout high school and
oh yeah,
and all that stuff. So I was like, oh, I'll go into nursing. I don't know what else to do with my life. And so I started down that process. Didn't even get into nursing school. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to go for marketing. I want to be in the music industry.
Miss Marketing.
Yeah, right. And bombed my first year of college.
Yeah.
Because mind you, this is when things really start ramping up in my mental space.
Never good.
Never good.
Never good.
I was running from things that I couldn't run from.
Yeah. And
it was starting to show.
Yeah.
So the whole facade, I was still living. It was just getting more intense because you add in adult problems. Mm-hmm. And you can only run so far.
Because were you married yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet when I was in school, or when I started school. I then took a year off. In that time, my ex-husband deployed again.
Ooh.
And I was like, you know what? I need something because he was gone for 14 months. Yeah. I was like, I need something productive to do besides just work. So I went back to school. Started double majoring, loved it, been doing it ever since. Graduated with 2 degrees.
Hell yeah.
Mind you, in that time I got married at 19. Yep, and like I remember thinking to myself, oh, this is just what you do. This is the logical next step.
Yeah.
And I remember clinging to my ex-husband and doing anything to manipulate him into staying with me and loving me and marrying me, obviously. And in that time, we had a fight one time, and he was like, he wanted to break up with me, and I remember thinking to myself, oh, what do I do to keep him? And that's when I decided to share with him about being abused. So he was the first one I told when I was like 18. I hadn't uttered a word about it.
About it since.
Yep. And anyway, so we get married, did all the married things that you're supposed to do. And again, I was running so far away from Christ. It's ridiculous because like my ex, he's not a religious person. He's not anything even remotely close to that. So that's what I was too. Because I just wanted to do what he wanted to do because I didn't have a personality of my own.
Yep.
And as the years went on, we moved a lot. My ex-husband was full-time Army at this time. So we moved around the state a lot. I was spending money like crazy. My ex-husband was very controlling with money. So like that was the number one contention. Is that the right word?
I think so.
Number one thing in our marriage that we thought about, which a lot of marriages are like that.
Yeah.
But we didn't have the foundation with each other to fight healthily, in a healthy way. So we never communicated, but yeah, we had this facade going of we had this perfect marriage. We're so in love. We're high school sweethearts.
Right.
Been together since 14 and just living the life. And that's what we portrayed to people. And I remember I just became more and more of a shell of a person. Money was very abundant in that marriage.
Yeah.
Which is very bad for me. Because it's funny, but it's not.
Yeah.
Because spending money became an addiction for me.
Yeah.
In a real way. And it became a very unhealthy thing. It was very tough on our marriage. If you want to call it a marriage. I'm forever grateful for that man. He gave me a beautiful daughter. And so I can only speak highly of him, but this is just what happened and the truth of the matter, and he would probably agree with everything I'm saying. So I do need to preface that. So all this while I'm running away from Christ, and even though I feel him knocking at my heart, at my brain, at my mind, like come to me, and I just kept running. Because I had this thought in my head, which I think a lot of people do, is, oh, just let me clean up myself before I come to the feet of Christ.
Yep.
Which I know better now.
Right, but
that's what I believed.
Yeah.
I believed that with every ounce of who I was at the time. That like, oh, I'll get there. I just need to fix myself first. I need to, become a better person first. And so the cracks in our marriage were starting to show. And at this time we had been married for 7-8 years. We had Hadley. Before that we had a miscarriage, which messes with anybody. And so we had Hadley. She was amazing, still is amazing. But I only got sicker from there. Mentally sicker. I was spending money and in ways that, and so when it comes to the whole money thing, in my head, like we didn't grow up rich or even middle class. We we weren't well off. So I have this skewed view of money.
Yeah.
Where I need to spend it or it'll go away.
Or you'll lose it. Yeah.
Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yep.
It's skewed. But that's what drove me to spend the money, because I'm like, if I don't spend it, it won't come back. It'll go away. And
yeah,
it's the number one driver of anxiety about money. And my ex-husband was very controlling with it. So like that even drove me more into wanting to spend it. So much so that I found myself not wanting to spend money but yet spending it like crazy. That doesn't make sense. I got to a breaking point. And my breaking point was getting arrested for shoplifting. Crazy, huh?
Yeah.
I just told Elly this
I
like
didn't think
not
she was
too
gonna
long
say
ago. Like,
no, we were sitting in the freaking basement and she goes, I'm trying to share if I should. You didn't even mention the podcast. You said, I'm trying to decide if I should share that I got arrested. And I was like, I dead ass thought she meant like last week.
yeah, no.
I was like,
And I was like, 8 years ago.
I was like, when?
No,
like,
it was longer.
8 years ago. I was like, oh.
No, it was longer than that now.
I thought she meant like last Tuesday. I was like, crap.
No, this had to be like 9 years ago now.
We're not even remotely talking about the podcast, and you whipped out.
Yeah, I know, but
I mentioned that I got arrested.
It's on my mind, but it's not something that, like, talk about a bombshell. Thank you, listeners. But it's part of my story. It's one of the lowest points of my life, and it's not something that I am like excited to share with people.
Yeah.
But it's part of my story, and it was the catalyst
for everything after.
I knew exactly why I did it. I know exactly why I did it to this day. I was lost and I was running from the Lord, from everything, and I was trying to do everything in my power to not face myself and face the truth of who I was. And from that moment on is when things really, really started to change, and not in a good way. Well, I take that back. It wasn't a good way, because my marriage started falling apart, and my ex-husband had gotten really sick. So the whole last year of our marriage, he almost died 3 times.
Oh my gosh.
He was in the hospital for most of that year. He had ulcerative colitis. Are you familiar with that?
I think so.
It's kind of like Crohn's.
Yes.
But it only attacks your colon.
Yes.
So yeah, in that time, it got really, really, really bad. So I was taking care of our daughter. I was taking care of him, our house, our dogs, and working full time. And things were just getting worse and worse and worse. And I remember thinking to myself, like, what is life? Like, what is the point here? I've never, ever been, like, to the point of, like, wanting to take my life. Like, that's not, I thank the Lord.
Yeah.
But I see why people do. Unfortunately. I thank God that he has never put that in, or not, he would never put that in my brain, but like
that he's kept it out.
Yeah, exactly. Through all the trials and tribulations, and I never got to that point, thank God. And so my husband almost died right after. In that process, he loses his career because he had to have his colon taken out.
Medical discharge.
So he was medically retired from the Army. And so right after that, he decides he wants a divorce. And he goes straight to divorce. No mediation, no counseling, no separation, nothing. Straight to divorce. And by no way, shape, or form am I saying that I am innocent in our situation, because I mean, look at what I did to us. But it's weird because I'm divorced and I don't believe in divorce, but at the same time, it takes two.
Yeah.
I was the only one fighting for our marriage, and you can't stay married to somebody who doesn't want to be married to you.
Yeah.
And we can talk about the whole divorce process in another episode, because that's a whole nother thing. But that was a very traumatic time. But after that, in that time, everything was coming to a head. Everything. I had started going to church with my mom, because I'm like, there's got to be something there. Like,
yeah.
I started going to church with her, and I remember starting to feel that spark. I didn't know what it meant. I just know that it was something that I needed to explore. And there was a time at the end of my marriage when I had a realization that everything was stripped away from me. I lost everything that I held of value in this world. I lost my husband, my dignity, because this was after I got arrested. My pride, everything I held of value was stripped away. Everything that I worked for, and I say this, everything that I worked for, and it was really my marriage.
Yeah.
Like, he became my God. He was my everything.
Yeah.
And all that was gone. And I see it so clearly now. There was one Sunday when I was at my worst. I was at the lowest point of my life. And my mom was there with me. And this was after, basically, I was going through like a biblical 12-step program, essentially. And I'd gotten to the point where I had to make my amends, and basically, I don't remember what step it is, 4 or 5, where you like write down all your shortcomings and your sins and all that stuff, and you share it with somebody. Well, I had done that, and I had it in a notebook, and my ex read it. He read it when I wasn't at home. This is kind of backing up a little bit. This was,
I did not know that.
Yeah, this was 4 days after I had a surgery.
After you had a surgery?
Yeah.
Oh.
So I was recovering, and
jeez.
I came home, and he was like, was it? Okay. I came home from work or something, and he was like furious, and I'm like, what the heck? I mean, like, granted, things weren't great,
right? But it just seemed.
But he was like, physically angry. Not physically angry. He was visibly angry.
Visibly angry.
And he had said something that was in the book that I had never shared with him, and I knew it in that moment.
That he knew everything.
That he read everything. And in one way, like, I was relieved.
Because you don't have to say it. Or why?
Like, well, okay, well, now you know everything.
True.
But the primary emotion I was feeling was betrayal.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit of embarrassment. Humiliation. But mostly betrayal. You know, I still have that book to this day. He took that away from me. He took something that I sacrificed everything for away from me. And that was really the catalyst to our marriage. So going back to that Sunday, I vividly remember it. It was one Sunday where I was the lowest I'd ever been in my life. Everything was stripped away, and I didn't know where to go. So I went to church, and a pastor, his name is Monty, he was there, and my mom had shared a little bit with him about what was going on with me. And there was a moment, the first time in my life, I heard God's voice and I felt God's presence. And it was during the song by our friend Sarah was singing it. It was Resurrecting by Elevation. And the part where it's in the bridge where it says, how does it go? How does it go, babe? Resurrecting the bridge. King is resurrecting me. The resurrected King is resurrecting me.
Resurrected is resurrected. Yeah.
And in that moment, I felt the fire of God. This is making me emotional. And I've never looked back. I felt God's presence in his arms, like wrapping around me. And I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I felt love, like I felt love. And I knew then why God stripped everything away from me.
Mm-hmm.
I knew then that he stripped everything away from me to replace it with him. And that's all I'll ever need. He is the answer. You know, I searched most of my life for peace, and I didn't understand joy until I laid my life down at his feet. And life is still hard. But I now know joy. I now know peace. And I know who God is. The year after that, I got baptized on Christmas morning.
I didn't know it was Christmas morning.
Yep.
Oh.
And I met my now husband, who is a man of God, and I thank God for that every single day.
You make me cry over here.
Again, life is hard, but I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be now. And he got me through the worst times of my life, and he will continue to guide us and love us through it. And I know that he is good, and I know that he's always going to be good. And he has never forsaken me, even as a child. He was always there. And I used to wonder, like, why did he allow this to happen? Yeah. And it's not for me to understand why. It's for me to understand God and who he is, and share my testimony and share my story, and to break generational curses by the grace of God. And that's where I am today, hopefully.
No, what do you mean, hopefully?
I don't know.
Here we are.
Here we are. So that's that's the gist of my
Just the
testimony.
gist.
Just the gist, long story short.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's my testimony.
That's your testimony.
This is my testimony.
From death to life. We're good singers.
So totally good singers. Anyway, that wraps up this episode, I think. Do you have any thoughts? No.
Nope.
Okay.
I mean, what do you want me to say?
I don't know. What are you thinking?
That it... How do I say this? It's not bad. You're probably like, what is she going to say?
Yeah.
It shows me why I look up to you.
Oh.
Don't. Seriously. Just that you've done a lot.
Yeah.
You've gone through a lot.
Yeah.
And you still turned out okay, I guess.
I'm okay.
So.
Like. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for that.
You're welcome for that.
All right. We will see you guys next week.
My turn
when
to
it's
talk.
Elly's turn. She will shower by then. Hopefully.
Say a prayer, please.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Anyways, we'll see you next week.
See you
Have
next
a
week.
wonderful, blessed week. Bye.
Bye.